Hey everybody, so I'm back with another video. I want to talk about something I don't think I've ever talked about before, or really talked much about, and I'm watching my son at the same time because he's crawling around on the floor, so if you hear him or I jump up and run away, it's because I don't want him playing with something. But I've never really talked about or went into great detail about my Crohn's and colitis. And I think it might be maybe something beneficial to people out there who are having strange symptoms and they're not exactly sure what's going on, especially GI symptoms, and they're just wondering. And I'm going to just basically tell you my early days of how it started. It's probably going to be a 1 or 2 part series, depending on the boy. And I basically just want to talk about from the beginning until where I'm at now. And we'll start in the beginning. When I was younger, like teenager, I always had kind of like weird GI issues, which I thought were normal. I just thought it was everybody had these same issues. Going to the bathroom and just stomach pain and cramping, and I just figured it's normal, gas or something like that. I had a lot of problem when I was a kid with constipation, and again, you assume it's normal. There wasn't red flags to show my mom or because my mother raised me, that like, hey, I should bring her to the doctor because these are weird. So there was no like, I think extremely abnormal symptoms that I was having that suggested I should go to see a doctor that I can think of. I never was treated before I was a young adult. And when I turned around 18, 19 years old, I started having some really strange to me symptoms, really strange problems, because I grew up my whole entire life. I grew up my whole entire life drinking milk, eating ice cream, eating cheese, butter, things like that, dairy. And all of a sudden, one day, I couldn't. Excuse me, hold that thought. 1 second. You have to come over here, you silly woman. You cannot play with that. No, you cannot play with that here. You play with a rubber ducky. Okay. Sorry. So when I was like 18, 19 years old, all of a sudden I couldn't drink any dairy. And how I found out is I would, every once in a while stop at the store or whatever and get a pint of chocolate milk and some Doritos, real healthy, or an ice cream bar or something. And all of a sudden, whenever I would eat dairy or drink dairy, within 30 minutes, I could count it on a clock. Within 30 minutes, I was projectile vomiting, diarrhea, pain, dizzy, nauseous. I was like the most horrific thing I had ever been through. And it didn't just last 1 hour. It would last several hours. There would be nothing left inside of me, and I'd still be like dry heaving, sweating, like shaking and everything. Over something I had eaten my whole entire life. I had never had this problem before. It was like I woke up one day and I couldn't have anything dairy. So it was like really strange, and I'm like trying to explain it to like my mom, and she's like, "You're crazy, get out of here, you drink so much milk." And I'm like, "No, I swear to God, I can't drink milk anymore." And because of the type of person that I am, I was like, "Here, I'll prove it to you." Said 30 minutes after I eat this, I'm gonna be sick. I'm telling you right now. She's like, get out of here, Cherie. No way, I don't believe you. So I drank a pint of whole milk, and I ate like a small bag of Doritos. Within 30 minutes, I was projectile vomiting, I was in shaking again, I was dizzy, I was going to the bathroom, and I'm like, "Do you believe me now? Do you believe that there's something wrong?" And she's like, "Okay, yeah, maybe take a lactate pill or something and stop drinking this stuff, or try taking a pill." But so that happened there. And then I stopped eating all this dairy, and I tried like the lactate pills and like Beano and all these different things. Nothing helped. So I just cut dairy out of my diet. I drank no more milk, no more butter, no more ice cream, no more cheese, nothing. I started to like look for alternatives. Hold that thought. Oh yes, you cannot play with that. Ah, come here. Oh yes. You can't. Ha. Play with your. Okay. Sorry. He's starting to crawl, so he's kind of like everywhere, and he wants to get into everything and touch everything, and not everything is. He can. Oh my God, he's doing it. Anyways, I'm gonna talk fast. So, it was hard to find in the early 2000s alternatives to dairy. They didn't have anything like they have now, but I found soy milk. And I tried drinking soy milk, it was like so thick, it wasn't like regular milk, so I was like, let me try chocolate. So I started drinking chocolate soy milk, and that was really good. But then they had rice milk too, and that was fantastic. I drank chocolate rice milk like it was going out of style. I had no problem with the rice milk or the soy milk. They were both okay, as far as me not having, I'm always bloated. I always had that bloated feeling, but it wasn't like the sickness, the throwing up and everything like that. I could tolerate it. And then I would find like at some of the whole health food stores, you could find like tofu ice cream if I really wanted ice cream, tofu cheesecake. They had, I think it was called Rice Dream ice cream bars too. And again, you had, two to choose from. It's nothing like it is now. August, you come sit here with mommy. Maybe for a few minutes. So it was nothing like they have out there now, and so yeah, I was drinking that, eating that for a long time, and I seemed to be okay. Those symptoms kind of went away when I stopped eating and drinking dairy. But then it was like, that was like 18, 19 when I had discovered I had a problem there. And then when I was like, I don't know, early 20s, 23, 24 years old, I started developing this really severe abdominal pain, upper abdominal pain. And I didn't know what it was, and I wasn't eating right, but I mean, what young adult or what teenager does? So I was in my early 20s, and I was drinking lots of coffee and drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes and going to parties and not eating right, not taking care of myself. And I started to develop this like really horrible upper abdominal pain. And my mom's like, well, you got insurance now, go to the doctor and see what's wrong. So I scheduled a doctor appointment. I got a GI. I didn't know what a GI was. I'd never needed one before. And they were like, okay, we'll do an endoscopy, we'll do some blood work and stuff like that. So that was my first endoscopy appointment, I was like 23. And they found that I had, I think it was like gastritis, and I had, the big one was H. pylori. And that was super, super, super painful. If you hear barking or anything, it's my father-in-law. And he's dropping off, my son's milk just came in the mail. So they said I tested positive for H. pylori, which is like a parasite that lives in your stomach and eats the lining of your intestines and stomach, and it's extremely painful. And they're like, there's no way, there's a way to cure it, but you have to be on heavy doses of antibiotics for a long period of time. Or we can just kind of like stabilize it, I guess, and control it with omeprazole, which is an antacid. So they're like, do the omeprazole, try that and see if it works. And I was on omeprazole every single day for 2 years. And after about 6 to 8 months, the pain went away. But in the meantime, I had lost a lot of weight because I couldn't eat. It felt like somebody was doing like this in my stomach and my intestines. It was like so painful. And you get it by fruits and vegetables, unwashed fruits and vegetables. And I don't know. Now I can't eat really any fruits and veggies now, but If I do, then we, oh no, I'm sorry. If we do, then I have to roast it or really wash it very well, of course, anyways. Oh, big deal. So the H. pylori kind of went away, and that kind of like stabilized and whatever, and I seen him whenever I seen him. And 24 years old rolls around, 24, 25, I started like having this really, really wicked lower right abdominal pain. And it was going on like 2 weeks. I could barely walk. I was going to work. And finally my best friend was like, you have to go to the hospital. I'm going to take you. And we grabbed my mom and we went to the hospital. And they thought it was my appendix because of where the area it was in. It was so much pain and everything. And you want Duffy? Hold on. It was so much pain in my lower right abdomen, and they did tests and everything on me, and I was in the hospital for a week with antibiotics, strong antibiotics, and that dosage of antibiotics kicked the H. pylori right in the butt also. And they didn't know what was wrong, they just knew that I had an infection and an inflammatory intestines. I think it was a small intestine, so it was inflamed. So that's when I started doing, getting my GI was getting more involved. He's like, okay, we're gonna do blood work, we're gonna do a capsule, we're gonna do ultrasound, we're gonna do colonoscopy, we're gonna do, you're gonna, just everything. Stool samples, everything. So I was just like, what the hell is going on? You know, I'm 23 years old and I have to do all of these tests. And it was just really crazy. But I did them, and the easiest way to find Crohn's colitis is a colonoscopy, but I think they have to do everything to kind of rule out other things, because at first they thought I had MS by the symptoms that I had, but then I remember them, after the first colonoscopy I had, they came in the room and they're like, oh, well, you have Crohn's disease. And I was out of it, and I was just like, oh, okay, like, whatever, I don't know what that is. They're like, we're going to give you this medication. It was Lialda. Take this medication twice a day, and go by this diet, and whatever. Start seeing him regularly. And I was like, okay. I started to read up about it. I really did. Still in my early 20s, I really didn't care. I kind of like, okay, whatever, and I just did my own thing. And I was still partying and drinking and having a great time. I was only taking my medication when I felt like it. It was so stupid, and it really was like the nail in the coffin for me, because a year later I ended up in the hospital again, 1 year after being diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I this time I was in and out of the hospital about 9 times. Every other day we were going in there, and they were just shooting me full of morphine and sending me home. I was having severe abdominal pain, like lower abdominal pain again. And I was trying to explain it to them, and they were like, oh no. They were pushing, here, you want this? They were just shooting me full of morphine, sending me home. Shooting me full of morphine, sending me home. And I would feel better, well, until the morphine ran off, and then I was in pain again. I couldn't stand up, and I couldn't eat, and I had a high fever. I was just like sleeping, and I was sweating, and it was like horrible. Finally, my mom said, it was like the 8th or 9th time that we went to the emergency room. She told them, we're not leaving until you figure out what's wrong with her, because there's something wrong with her. So they did I think it was a dye, and that's when they found the hole in my intestines. And it's where like the large intestines and small intestines meet. And then they were like, okay, yeah, we have a problem, so they admitted me. And I was in the hospital for about 2.5 months. I think at one point I got out. I was out for like 2 or 3 days. I was out long enough to get a haircut. This was before the surgery. No, it was after surgery. Long enough to get a haircut and get sick and get back in, because I was still not right. So I was in there about a month, the first month, and they were just like pushing antibiotics, and checking me and scanning me. And they were like, okay, the antibiotics aren't working. nothing's working. And I was in so much pain, I couldn't stand up, I had to use a wheelchair. People pushed me around, I was so weak, I couldn't eat. It was horrible. It was unbelievable pain. So the doctor came in, there was like 6 or 7 of them. He was the chief, and then he brought like 6 or 7 other doctors with him. And they said, or he said, we have to do surgery tomorrow, or you won't live another week because of sepsis and all that stuff. And I still was kind of like in shock, I guess, because I didn't process it right away. And I was just like, and he's like, is that, something you want to consent to, or something like that? I don't know. And he's like, is that okay, or whatever? We have to do this surgery. And I was like, yeah, whatever, no problem. And I was alone, just sitting there in my hospital bed, having all these people staring at me. And I was just like, okay, yeah, no problem. Whatever it does to fix this. I didn't understand the severity of the problem, I think, until after I got out of the hospital and kind of like saw what the fuck was what was going on. And so the next day they scheduled me for emergency surgery. They did they cut me all the way down the middle, like this, and they pulled out my intestines and everything, and they had to resect and cut off all the dead pieces of the intestines that was diseased, that had like the hole and the damage, and then reconnect it back together. I also lost parts of my colon at the same time, and they took like this much intestines, whole like arm's length, and portions of my colon. And there's some like wicked horror stories from being in the hospital too, like that I had endured. Like for when I was coming back from the emergency room after they did the surgery and after I woke up, kind of, and they were like wheeling me into the room. They're like, the nurses were like, you have to crawl off this bed and get on that bed. And I'm like, I can't even move. I'm like, what? And they're like, you have to get up and go on that bed. And I was just like completely out of it. I mean, I have this cut inside of my stomach like this. I can barely move. Staples and everything. And they're like, you have to get on the other bed. We can't do it. You have to do it yourself. I guess in risk of dropping it. Except for the idiots forgot to lock the bed. So as soon as I crawled and I got halfway on that bed, the bed collapsed and I fell off of the stretcher. And I was screaming because I just got out of surgery, and they were panicking, and they popped the bed up really quick, and they just like started hitting my morphine for me. They're like, we're gonna do it for you this time. And they just started hitting it, I guess so that I would forget or whatever. And I remember it, as much as groggy and as out of it as I was, I remember falling and the pain and the shock and the fear of like what's just happened. So after the surgery, I was there probably about another month recouping. I got out a little bit for like 24 hours and I got sick and had to go back in, and then I was let out again, and I ended up catching, probably from the hospital, I suppose, a staph infection in the surgery site, which was more painful than anything I can ever imagine. And that I started having seizures as well because my potassium and magnesium levels were all screwed up. So they put me in ICU for a few days. And then, oh my word. And then after that, I was in for a little while longer, had to walk with like a Nate. Okay. I had to walk with a walker for a while. This big, huge staples in my, oh my god, dog food. And it was just horrible. And after that experience, that's when I woke up and stopped drinking and stopped smoking and tried to take care of myself. That was my big wake-up call. Almost dying. That scared me. It still scares me to this day. I don't want to have to go through that ever again, especially now that I have this guy. I don't want him to have to see me like that. And then, so I got out of the hospital, and I tried to, like went back to work or whatever, and it was so hard because I wasn't getting a paycheck and I still had to pay for my insurance. So I had to like put it on a credit card every 2 weeks so that they wouldn't kick me out of the hospital. That was crazy. After all the other shit that you deal with, you have to deal with that too. Of course, yeah. So yeah, so that was around the age of 25, 26, something like that. Maybe a little later. Yeah, I was probably 25, 26. And then I got out of the hospital and I tried to do everything right. And we'll go ahead and end that now. To give you an idea, I'm 36, so that was 26. So we're at 10 years. But I'll leave this for the second half for part 2 of the video. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Say hey-do. Hey-do. Okay, hey-do, I'll